I'm going to kick our case analysis off by defining and describing the products that Marvel offers. It breaks down into three different categories primarily for Marvel's product suite. The first being kind of the legacy business, which is comic books. Then they have a second element there with their products that is the toys side of things. And then the third is their licensing. So comic books breaks up into two different areas in the product suite for Marvel. The first being periodicals, which are comic books that are let out over a period of time with the story continuing between each of them. The second is graphic novels. These graphic novels are a little bit more of a complete end-to-end story and are a little bit longer form. The second category that I mentioned was toys. Some examples that the case points out in this are the Hulk hands. Basically, they're a way for the kid to feel like they are Hulk. They have big hands that they put over their own hands, and they're green and kind of fun. Another similar example in the case are the Spider-Man web blaster toys. Basically, this allows the kid to feel like they're Spider-Man shooting webs out of their wrist using little gloves and silly string. The toys are obviously a huge product offering of Marvel. The third that is outlined in the case is the licensing, and this is the most complex product offering. There is a variety here. So breaking it out in a few different categories, first is the media side of the licensing. One that is huge is movies. It talked a lot about how big Spider-Man was for Marvel. This also plays a role in kids' TV shows. So they license the characters and the brand to TV shows across different kids' TV stations. Another one is video games. So nearly all of the different Marvel characters and they all have video games that they are associated with. There's also the theme parks is another variety of media that is licensed out. So having all of the characters in rides and at the parks and things like that. Another aspect of the licensing is in goods, so apparel, accessories, collectibles, putting the Marvel brand or any of the characters like Spider-Man or Captain America on a t-shirt is a licensing deal that Marvel has done. Collectibles, little X-Men action figures, things like that that could appeal to both the youngest of Marvel fans all the way to the oldest of the collectors out there. Another interesting licensing deal that happens often is food products. So in order to market and sell food, these companies will license the Marvel brand or their characters and stamp the Hulk on the side of some kids' food to appeal to the kids and get them excited about eating their food. So again, the three main product categories are first comic books, second toys, and third licensing.
So I'll be discussing the importance of Marvel's three divisions, comic books, toys, and licensing, to its past and future performance. So comic books are Marvel's core foundation. It's what they started as, it's where they generate a lot of revenue. And it's also a division that is growing. They sold 3.6 million copies in 2003 and generated 300 million in sales just in the US. There's two main formats of comic books: periodicals, which consisted of 90% of publishing sales in 2003, and graphic novels, which are being revamped for Generation X, as well as comic books. And they're coming out with a new line of comic books called Marvel Age in 2004 that is to suit the new generation. Interest in comic books can be sparked by movies. They see the movie and go out and buy the comic books, or vice versa. They've read the comic books and go and see the movie. This also growing division has also increased their market share to 40%, which is up from 25%, leaving their competition, DC Comics, in the dust. They're at 35%. So licensing is also a big division for Marvel. It's fairly new, and it's where they generate a lot of revenue also. They have a bunch of media licensing, video games, motion pictures, TV programs, amusement parks. They make a lot of revenue from box office sales. They averaged 42 million in 2003, and overall, their licensing generated $5.8 billion in 2003. So this is also a division that is growing. In 2003, there was a 148% increase in new licensees. So they're getting their brand out there. They're also getting their brand out there with toys. They signed an agreement with TBW, which allows them to create new toys with Marvel's overall approval. They can't distribute or sell any of these toys without Marvel's final approval. And then the sale of action figures account for 90% of toy licensing revenue, which is a pretty big amount. These toys are marketed to boys mostly, ranging from the ages 4 to 23. Not only are these toys for young boys, but there's also collector items. So there's a collector's market out there that accounts for 20% of total sales. So these are not necessarily boys, but men or young adults that are buying these toys and collecting them. And then toys generated $20 billion in sales revenue in 2003. So this is also a big division for Marvel. All three of these divisions combined promote their brand and generate quite a bit of revenue. And from what I can tell, these three divisions is what makes Marvel's company profitable. Thank you.
When looking at the success that Spider-Man brought to the Marvel enterprises, we see that that first movie in 2000, I think it was 2004, showed that there was significant interest in the characters that people had kind of grown up with, and by being exposed to the Spider-Man through the theatrical release of the movie, it showed that it was a very successful opportunity for Marvel to look into further. Now, I don't believe that their success is solely based off the one character of Spider-Man, but that was a good enough almost test market to say, hey, there's a big interest here in this type of entertainment. They had a lot of good feedback from that movie, and I think it would be wise for Marvel to look into some of the lesser known characters and invest some money into establishing those so that they could profit off of the use of those characters in movies, consumer goods, and be able to use those as licensing opportunities more than just the Spider-Man and some of the other characters that they had established. With the Marvel universe having, I think they said, more than like 4,000 characters that they could use. There's obviously some bigger name ones. We have X-Men and Iron Man and some of these other things that they've used. But that, based on this article, those are all things that they came up with after really the Spider-Man, and decided to use as movies. And we have the opportunity to use hindsight and say, yeah, it was a good idea to go out and use some of these lesser known characters because they've made so many so many movies about the Avengers and Iron Man and Captain America and all these things that are all Marvel based, and they've been very successful with it. So great idea to go forward with some of the lesser known characters to be able to profit and maximize the profits that they had just an opportunity to use. And now they have that opportunity to use them for licensing for every product imaginable. So I thought that was very successful.
So in regards to the strategic vision for Marvel and where they should go, I think there's two key things that they need to focus on. The first is brand loyalty. Marvel, for half a century, has been a name that people have known here and there, but it hasn't really been a household name, something that people can associate with entertainment, with value, with action heroes, with movies and merchandise. But it has been a name. So I think creating that brand loyalty that they're looking for that wallet sharing effect, and being able to create a product and a service that people can associate with a fun time, with something that has meaning for the family, for friends, and can be really enjoyable. And I think there's a couple ways that they can do that. Drawing in the mass crowds, the most amount of customers they can, in the most cost-effective way, through using those big names that they have, those big character names, but incorporating those storylines as we've seen in the recent past, using their power hitters to develop other products. It's just like any product. You can use a brand name to develop smaller products, to do that research and development on the side as you're promoting such a large product, and then to build a story. Every great company needs a story. Marvel's the same way, and it just so happens that in their company they create stories, and they have these storylines that they've been able to develop their characters, and that's what they really need to do with themselves as a company, and use these characters to define their platform, their backstory, and help people understand why Marvel is what it is. And in doing so, that'll help build that brand loyalty. The second thing that they need to really focus on is cost efficiencies, and being able to reach their consumer and reach their consumer in a way that people are going to respond to build that brand loyalty. And doing that cost effectively is really going to help them set up a path for great success, continued success over the course of the next decade, 2 or 3. And there's a couple ways that they can do that. One that's going to be very cost effective for them is licensing. While they do have such command of a market, and they have had such great success, they may not be subject matter experts in all areas. Not every company can be the best at everything, and so licensing to toy manufacturers and movie studios and production agencies, all those different key businesses that will help them expand their product and their distribution. So licensing is going to be really important for them to help get what they want out to their consumers and out to their target. So licensing is going to be a cost-effective way. And I think movies and production and publishing, we see in their financial information that the licensing figures have almost doubled, from 2002 to 2003. But something that is growing in a stable way thus far is the publishing. And I think that publishing is something that they can do through movies and licensing, and really be able to command the market that way. Really, it's going to be about building brand loyalty from this point on, and having people know Marvel as a household name. So strategic vision for the next few years: use licensing to your advantage, trust in the expert opinions and expertise of other companies to help drive your market or your product to market in the best way possible, and to create a storyline that people are going to remember.